Hey everybody, welcome into Extreme Radio, presented by GracePointe Healthcare. You go to gracepointhealthcare.com, request your appointment online, mention you're from 8-Man Extreme, you get $20 off your new patient office visit fee. GracePointe Healthcare, modern medicine the old-fashioned way. What an exciting weekend for football, Isaiah. Just fantastic all around. Spencer Thompson and James Isaiah. Just mixed two names there. Spencer Thompson and James Shannon. Bringing you every bit of the recap from this past weekend's events. We had a really fantastic weekend of 8-man football. The Jamboree is over. The preseason is over. It's time for full football going into this weekend, and we'll talk about that later. But we obviously have to address the elephant in the room. I gained 25 pounds over the summer, so everybody shut up about that. No, seriously. We had our first ever Extreme Coaches Forum. We had that yesterday ahead of the Jamboree. We didn't have as many coaches as we wanted because some people had to back out due to personal commitments and some people couldn't make the drive up. But we had 5 coaches there. We got to ask them all really good questions. One important thing I do want to say, I want to apologize for this is the second week in a row I've had to apologize for stuff and hope that, and at least I'm coming out about it and apologizing ahead so that it's not like I'm just seeing it and ignoring on. I want to apologize to Coach Flanders. It was a lack of judgment on my part with the comment I made of, I know I'm going to get a dirty look from Flanders here when I said that during the coaches forum. I want to apologize to him for that. As well as apologize publicly because it was a lack of judgment on my part in thinking ahead that when I had mentioned the MTAC championship, I thought that I would have gotten a dirty look from Flanders for bringing that up again since the coach that he lost to in the championship was there. It's just a lack of judgment on my part. I do apologize for that. I didn't mean anything by immediately mentioning that, but whether or not he was offended by it or whether or not anybody was offended by it, I felt uncomfortable for making that. Right after I said it, I realized maybe this was not the appropriate thing to say in that context. So I do apologize for saying that. Hopefully, going forward, I'll have to give less apologies so that I'm actually saying the right thing the first time. But going forward, hopefully we can move past that. But aside from my slip up and aside from the camera dying towards the end, we seriously need to get a new camera. Yeah. And Isaiah will definitely attest to that. The coaches forum was fantastic. Yeah, your mic's hot, Isaiah. Right. They heard you say yeah.
All right.
But the coaches forum was fantastic. Even though we didn't have as many coaches as we wanted to, it was fantastic. We got some good insight from the coaches on a lot of different things. One thing I do want to say, because instead of asking him again in our interview later and beating the bush around it, it was a really good thing to hear Coach Judd Powers' side of the story on the whole Sacred Art thing. He publicly said, I had nothing to do with the coaching staff with what happened when they were suspended. He publicly came out and said that, and he said, we're just looking to move forward as a program. A little bit of praising on that on my part, but it's really good to see the direction going forward for Sacred Heart of them saying we do not approve of the previous coach's actions. We're here to play football. We're excited to be back in the conference. It's really great that he said all that stuff at the coaches forum.
Yeah, and the new Sacred Heart coach kind of reminds me of a baseball coach in a way.
He is a baseball coach.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
He said it during the coaches forum. He's the head football coach and he's the men's baseball coach.
He just kind of conducts himself like a baseball coach.
Yeah,
and that's a compliment. Like he's. Yeah, I know they don't have that many guys going into the next season, but
10.
Yeah, they got 10 guys. But I mean, just knowing him and hearing what he had to say, I'm sure those guys are going to go all out for him.
Yeah, and we're really excited to see how they perform this season. 100%. These all the Sacred Art guys. I mean, we even looked at the film yesterday. There are obviously some things all around that. From everybody around the Jamboree that needed to be improved, but we'll get to that later because the important thing is focusing on the coaches forum first. We asked him several different questions. One of the big questions we talked about was concussions and CTE. And it seemed like the general consensus around with all the coaches is that player safety is number one, which is a fantastic message for any athletic program, as it should be. You're right. It's the better wording I should have used there. But all of them, the general consensus was player safety first. I know that I don't remember which coach it was, but one of them said that some of them would rather see some more evidence presented. The kids are there to play football, but it was good to see that they all gave their perspective on it. Just their player safety is number one in their minds.
Yeah, and as it should be. As I said, with other injuries, like if you sprain an ankle or maybe dislocate a finger or something like that, that's something that can be between the coach and the player to figure out, the medical staff if you have it or whatnot. But when it comes to a head injury, that's way more serious, and that definitely needs to be a top priority for a coach to make sure that doesn't progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were very split on touchdown celebrations, which that'll probably be several years before it even comes remotely close to coming to the high school level. But yeah, the coaches forum was great for the first time we had ever hosted that. James and I were proud to co-host that event. Aside from the wireless microphones giving that nasty feedback on the stage, but it was a fantastic coaches forum, and we can't wait to do that next year ahead of the Jamboree, and hopefully we'll have more coaches involved. It's going to be fantastic. But let's of course get into the Jamboree, because I just got finished halfway through watching Saturday's Jamboree film. I haven't seen the full context of it, but you have, Isaiah.
I have.
And James has several times, and we'll get his piece on it later for Skip the Sensitivity. But I think our expectations are really shattered for a lot of teams, at least based on their Jamboree performances. I know that we've been talking about in the offseason, especially Trent has at times, about Bowling Green coming back dominant this year, but at least in terms of teams like Bowling Green, teams like FCS and FCS. I want to say FCA just a little bit. Teams like those, it looks like they are not the teams that we predicted pre-Jamboree, or at least that you and James predicted pre-Jamboree. It's looking like they're having some struggles going into their first game.
Well, I think looking at this Jamboree, I mean, I walked through this door. You remember, I was so excited for this show. I think this is going to be the best show of the year, really, because really, we made our predictions last week, and going into that Jamboree, and now after the Jamboree, nobody is how we thought they were going to be. It's either our expectations are high going into this week or very low. There's nobody that is replicating I had to change my entire predictions for record this year because of this Jamboree. And a lot of people say, well, it's just a Jamboree, you can't think about it too much, but we're a week out from playing, and
exactly.
those are the guys that you're going to have week one most likely, and as opposed omitting a couple of instances where some players didn't play. I know John Buchanan didn't play, Josh Austin didn't play, a lot of missing people, but at the end of the day, this is the team that you have, and we're a week out from play now, and if you're not going to bring it at the Jamboree and show out at the Jamboree and show that you can play with everyone else, there's not a switch that's going to flip this week. It's just not. You need to play hard whenever the lights turn on, really. And if you don't, 9 times out of 10, that switch is not going to flip up.
And one of the teams that we had talked about pre-show is that you're really excited to see is CCS.
Yes.
The Colts looked, obviously they play the most in the Jamboree because traditionally the team that hosts the Jamboree, they play at the beginning and the end, the beginning quarters and the end quarters of the Jamboree. And the big thing about it as well is that because of that, they had more playing time and they had more chance to show that how dominant they were. They had much more chance to show how dominant they were. And by your opinions, as well as James, of course, will give his later, but based on yours, CCS is looking like an MTAC championship level team just by their first impressions.
Yeah, and Coach Flanders was saying at the coach conference or the coach press conference that we
coaches
forum that we had on Saturday, that he was having to look third string, fourth string back, try to figure it out. But I think they found a back in Derek Jefferson. He's a 5'11", 178-pound junior who, get this, last season, I'm sure a lot of people didn't hear his name last year because he only got 28 carries, but he had 8 touchdowns on those 28 carries. He's looking like the lead back, and he's looking – I mean, of course you can't replicate the production that Isaiah Webb had last year, but he's going to be a successor to him, and he's really going to pick it up this year. I know he is.
Yeah, CCS is looking like their playoff caliber. They are looking as if they are defending national champion caliber as they come in defending their national championship, not defending their MTAC
Strangely enough.
championship. They're defending their undefeated season, it looks like, at least undefeated regular season. But another team to look at, going in order of the Jamboree here, looking at the Tennessee Heat. Because last year they only had 1 win on their season. They were not eligible for the playoffs because of a lot of different. I believe they had players that they pulled throughout the season, such that they were not eligible. I probably need to be fact checked on this, but they declared themselves ineligible for the playoffs, one reason or another. But coming into the Jamboree, they're looking like a playoff caliber team in the North.
Yeah. So the Heat last year, they had a lot of issues with players that left the team in the middle of the season, a lot of position changes, having to switch it up, different schemes, and they can really only go up from last season. And I feel like at the Jamboree, they showed, yes, they have holes, yes, they have issues that need to be addressed, but they have a good quarterback in there. They got the running back in what's his name?
Which the quarterback for
running back for the Heat.
Oh shoot, James will correct us on this later, but
James Redding, that's it.
James
Redding played very well last night. Yeah, of course they still do have holes. They have things that need to be worked out. Not a lot of experience, but they definitely showed that they're on the way up. And I would not be surprised to see them in the playoffs, or better yet, the MTAC Bowl.
Yeah, it's looking like they are in full position to do that, but like you said, a switch just doesn't turn on from the Jamboree a week later.
Yeah, and they need time, and they got a lot of underclassmen as well.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like a switch needs to even be turned this early on because of the dominance they showed in the Jamboree. And another team that's looking really good, as we predicted, actually. We thought that Lancaster was going to be a dominant force, in that it wasn't a matter of skill, it was a matter of numbers. But at least from what you saw, Lancaster is looking like they're not. It's looking like they're not dominance level. They're not CCS level quite yet. It's looking like they're more average, but they have every potential to get to that dominance.
Yeah, and of course, last Sunday I was very, very skeptical of Lancaster because of the little amount of exposure I had to them. There was just no way that with the amount that I had seen of them that I could really definitely say that they could have a winning record. But last night they showed the ability to get the ball down the field. They did a lot of short runs. They get 4 yards, 3 downs, and then they maybe run a play action or run a pass to the outside. I even saw a go on one play that resulted in a touchdown. Their quarterback is, I think James told me he was in 8th grade. And he's a young kid, but he has a cannon for an arm.
Yeah, it reminds us of a junior Ricky McDowell from Lighthouse last year. They had a good quarterback. They didn't show up to the Jamboree this year because they don't. I think they just didn't have their football practices started yet. But we'll see how Lighthouse does later in the season. But reminding you of a McDowell with one of those quarterbacks who's who's not quite to the senior level yet, and especially with a middle school player who's about to go into high school. If he's in 8th grade and he's starting as a quarterback, it's a sign of how he's a good enough guy.
And if your team can compete with an 8th grade quarterback, he's playing well, then you are set for the next few years.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how they perform for Lancaster, and we'll be looking forward to broadcasting their games later in the season. Let's talk about Bowling Green, because a lot of predictions on, not just Trench side with hashtag Bowling Green bias, but on our part, at least on your side of the story and James's side of the story, it looked like Bowling Green was going to be a team to beat. It looked like they were going to be a team that's potentially number 2 seed in the North or the bowl seed. But based on what we saw from them last night, it's hard to make that call.
Yeah, and again, a lot of people are going to point to this and say, well, it's just a jamboree. And I'm rooting for Bowling Green because they're good guys and they have a great story, you know, coming from nothing to something. It's easy to follow, easy to get behind, but I'm really skeptical now that this is their year. I had them at 7-2 last week, but after just seeing how little protection the quarterback had to get that ball out and how the defense had holes in it and they didn't have much ball security. The quarterback threw 2 picks in a jamboree, may I add. It's just hard to keep them at the high level that we put them at last week.
Yeah, it's at least from the film that we saw, it's hard to do that. But the good news is Bowling Green can easily prove us wrong. I mean, they've got their opening game next week. Them and 3 other schools are opening their week early, so it is going to be fantastic to see how they perform throughout the season. Hopefully, they'll prove us wrong because we can't put them at a high level based on the film we saw last night. But I'm sure they'll prove us wrong. Who knows?
Let's hope.
Yeah. So time for a little bit of homeboy on your side. Classical. They were in the Jamboree last night as well. They're looking like your guys' new quarterback is looking good, and your defense had 2 pick sixes in the Jamboree?
1 pick six, 3 picks.
Yeah, 1 pick six, 4 total interceptions in the Jamboree.
That's
and
right, yeah.
FCS played both Bowling Green and Franklin Christian, so so FCS is looking a lot better than we predicted them to be. They're probably set to be the team to beat in the South.
Yeah, I think. Last week I was a little bit skeptical. I had a little bit of trouble putting them in the playoffs or in the MTAC Bowl. Just been a little bit skeptical because of the experience level. But I guess my class did something right. I mean, those guys look ready to play. Especially Joshua Salstron. He had 2 interceptions, more than 10 tackles, and a sack. And Ernie McKinnon got 2 touchdown receptions. Never played tight end before. Got 2 touchdown receptions. So also, Josh Austin and Jonah Rorty didn't play. So they're looking strong. I'm going to need to see a little bit more out of them. See when you're playing 4 full quarters, if you can stay composed, stay together for those 4 quarters. But I see a brotherhood forming there.
Yeah, FCS is looking like they're going to be a team to beat in the South. But, of course, we're going to see how they play out through the rest of the season. And then Franklin Christian Academy. Interesting choice by them. Their starting quarterback Daniel Holcomb, who's a junior now, he was on a missions trip in Cuba, so he could not play at the Jamboree. He'll be back next week. But what's interesting is that John Buchanan sat out the Jamboree. He sat out the Jamboree, so I think he's going to be back next week. But the FCA looks like they're in the mix. Even with losing the class of 2018, they're looking like they're in the mix of potentially another team to beat in the South.
Yeah, and FCS and FCA alike in that thing. 2 teams that were shorthanded in the Jamboree that showed they can perform without star power. FCA still were able not run the ball super effectively. Offensive line had some issues in this game. Could have been down to experience. We'll see what happens week 1. But their passing game really surprised me. Of course, they didn't have Holcomb in there throwing the ball, but their backup quarterback had a lot of arm strength, was able to zip out short passes, just march down the field, and defense was pretty strong as well. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with FCA.
Yeah, FCA is one of those. I'd like to compare them to the Dallas Cowboys of MTAC. Because they have an owner who's very involved with their program, just like Jerry Jones heavily involved with the Cowboys, arguably one of the most influential owners in football. Their owner is very involved. They have a potential dynasty there with good players and getting championships and such. And you never really know what's going to happen. Because it was like FCA, last year with losing in the playoffs. It's just like with the Dallas Cowboys having rookie quarterbacks and such and having the pieces in place, but losing in the playoffs. So it's there. I believe that FCA is the Dallas Cowboys of MTAC, and it's looking like they may be having another one. They may potentially have another one of those dynasty championship winning seasons.
Yeah, and I know better than to ever count out FCA,
of course,
because it was every year it's they're losing players. They're not going to be good. They're going to be trash this year.
Mm-hmm.
Next year they're right back in the mix. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't count out FCA because they're always going to have a good team because they could have Jackie Moon as a starting quarterback, and with that coaching staff they're going to win games.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, trying not to stay too much on the topic of FCA because we got 2 more teams to cover, but they have lost. They've lost their offensive coordinator, Ben Pugh. He went to CCS.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Wow.
you think about this as well. We'll get to CCS in a little bit and talk more in depth about him because you look, CCS has a stacked coaching staff right now. That's probably why they're going to be so dominant. Because you got Jordan Flanders at the helm, who's already a fantastic coach. As of now, he hasn't gotten an MTAC championship under his belt, but he's won several nationals. But you've got
this year will be his.
I certainly hope, for his sake, so that he doesn't just quit altogether. But with Jordan Flanders, you've got Jordan Flanders at the head coach helm. You've got Daniel Meek, who was the head coach of Hendersonville last year.
Daniel Meek.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy. And you've got Benjamin Pugh as offensive coordinator and such. I think CCS has every bit of tools to succeed. And look, this isn't James's homer influence on here, and Isaiah can attest to this as well, because we know that FCA's offense, even without having a steady quarterback last year because of Holcomb tearing his ACL, Ben Pugh is a good offensive coordinator. Daniel Meek is a fantastic head coach, and Flanders even more is a fantastic head coach. So I think based on the players that they have and the coaching staff they're with, CCS, I think they might be doing back-to-back national champions, but I think this may be the year that they take the MTAC championship.
Yeah, I really do think that CCS is going to take the MTAC championship. But going back to FCA and Coach Pugh, we had a scouting report ready when we played FCA last year. They were a team that liked to run it down the middle, run it down your throat, maybe bring a bootleg every now and again where you send Brandon Miner out to the corner and let him do some work in the open field. We had a scouting report ready, and when we showed up, they went 4 out receivers. Like they adjusted because of they adjusted their entire game plan in a week because of our run defense, and we had a lot of trouble stopping it because that's just really, really high IQ football from that coach, and CCS is really, really getting a gym.
Yeah, not only that, but I forgot to mention their defensive coordinator who's been on with CCS. It's been their Tommy Thornton, and CCS has really solid defense, not just seeing in the semi playoff last year, but throughout the season. So CCS will be the team to beat. But another team that we didn't know what to expect going into this year, Sacred Heart, and looking at the film, they only have 10 players. At least they only have 10 players that came out to the Jamboree. We don't know if they're going to have any other players on their football team this year. They may have some others that come in at the start of the school year. Who knows? But Sacred Heart was down to 10 players on their squad, and at least from what we saw last night, they were having their struggles, and it didn't look like they were a high competition team. They were giving it their all, that's for certain. But in terms of the teams they were playing, it was hard to say that you could really see any playoff caliber out of them from what you saw in the Jamboree. They'll probably prove us wrong.
Yeah, but it's going to take time for them to get back into the mix. But they really surprised me last night, because when you see a team that like them, correct me if I'm wrong, they only won 1 game last year.
Sacred Heart, I'm actually not sure, because they moved to 11-man football last year.
But they did have a rough year last year.
Yeah,
and coming back, they only have 10 people on the roster. It's going to take time, but at the same time, they probably surprised me more than any team in the Jamboree with just how much heart they put into it for the amount of numbers that they have. And Will Hoggle, their linebacker and fullback, was definitely a standout for me. He was in my top 5 list of standouts for this Jamboree. He nobody could take him down when he touched that ball. He was just shaking off multiple defenders, clogging up holes on defense. I mean, they have a decent starting 8, but they might win games just because of him this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually did look up the statistic here. Not a single win for Sacred Heart last year. So they're going back to their 2016 season was when they had their last W. So hopefully they're going to be looking for their first win this season as they go into 8-man football. But another team that South Haven. So we talked. I only laugh at this because of how we thought they were going to be a dominant team in the North. But looking at their performance last night, I think it was 20-0 in the quarter they played.
I think it was 32-0.
32-0 the quarter they played against Christian Community, and they have every potential to get themselves back up because they only lost a few seniors from last year, and there could have been multiple factors that went into it with the Jamboree, but. For South Haven to be dropped down by a blowout in just a quarter of the Jamboree against CCS, who they beat in the MTAC championship, it's really interesting to see how they'll go into the next season. But the defending MTAC championships were not up to the MTAC level last night.
Yeah, but they're still going to make the playoffs. And the reason I say that is, just like last year, they have an easy schedule again.
They do?
They do have a very easy schedule. I see them going 6-1, and their only loss is to CCS, and I don't think it'll be a very close game. I think South Haven played really well. I think, except for that CCS game. They played well in the other game. I think Emmanuel Dang was definitely a standout. He played receiver, and they gave it to him on back-to-back possessions. He could not be stopped. He has great hands, great speed. I could even see him playing some running back this year. He's a great receiver. I see them going 6-1 this year still, but I don't see them hanging with CCS or any team in the South in the playoffs.
Yeah, when we look at the playoffs last year as well, we didn't know how they were really going to perform against the Webb School in that semi, especially going all the way down to Bell Buckle. But they managed to surprise us. So I'm all for South Haven surprising us, but at least by what we saw last night, it's that they can make the play. They have every potential to make the playoffs, but if CCS faces them in the championship again, it's probably going to be it's probably not going to be what we expect.
Yeah, and they lost arguably the best player in the entire league this year. They lost an 1,000-yard rusher. They lost a great leader. It's going to be tough for them. And they're kind of they're going to have to find new leadership on the team. They're going to have to find out who's going to be our leader after Xavier. Who's going to lead this team, and that's going to take time. Again, I don't think it's necessarily an issue of flipping a switch on. I think it's everybody just coming together and figuring this out.
Mm-hmm. Now, at least as of now, we were supposed to have Judd Powers, the head coach for Sacred Heart, ahead of the game. We were supposed to have Judd Powers ahead of the game this Friday, but he has not connected in just yet. So not sure if he'll be connecting in yet or not.
And let me add, I just got a correction. CCS beat South Haven 24-0. That was the final
24-0. Okay, so you said it might have been 32, but it was 24-0. And again, that's just out of two quarters of play, I believe. So it is crazy. But we were supposed to have the Sacred Heart of Jesus High School head coach Judd Powers on the show, but we haven't heard anything directly from him yet. He hasn't connected in yet. So we could probably go in to skip the sensitivity on this portion until we potentially get Judd Powers in here. I think that's what we're gonna do here. Seeing, yeah, he has not come back in yet. So, all right, I think we're just gonna go ahead and move into skip the sensitivity with James Shannon. And again, if you guys don't already know, skip the sensitivity as well as extreme talk is 100% opinion. Does not reflect 8-Man Extreme or necessarily reflect 8-Man Extreme or the rest of the staff of 8-Man Extreme and the network itself. It's just 100% James's opinions on this session. All right, James, tell us, what did you think of the Jamboree? You there?
I am now.
There you are. All right.
I'm pulling to West Macaulay. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Boys, what's cooking? other than some great food at that CCS concession stand that you guys didn't get to partake of.
Oh, I didn't know there was
Bias.
food. I would have come.
Yeah, we would have come if we had known
Yo,
there was food itself.
The Philly cheesesteak and the burgers were next level. They have stepped their food game up. So with y'all going there at least at some point this season, you're gonna have to check it out during a halftime.
Man, it's very sparingly that we as broadcasters get free food at the venues we go to, but the Philly cheesesteak, oh man, I might have to make a case for that.
Who said anything about free?
That's what I'm saying.
Terrible.
That's what I'm saying is that we very sparingly as broadcasters get free food. It's a very sparing thing. That's what I'm saying. I may make a case for it that we get free food at CCS.
The Jamboree is the best time of the year because it's like Christmas for the football junkie. It's like Netflix binge watching for the football junkie. I mean, it's literally a way to stand there and Friday night taking 2 hours and last night taking 4 hours of nothing but straight football. No fillers, no nothing, just back to back to back games. I love it. I love that. To be honest, I love that there's now one Jamboree. And I would have liked it better if it had all been on one night, just because it would have made it. I don't know. It would have made it a little bit longer, but I am glad that they got it all together. They had all the teams able to be there. I would have liked to see Riverside and Lighthouse, but I love seeing the teams that were there and seeing what we're looking like for the 2018 season.
Yeah, it's a good preview course. Let's get a little bit more specific about the stuff you saw. Obviously, a lot of your predictions were shattered, and you changed a lot of different things from last week. So, just give a little bit of an insight to what you have, what predictions you made on your part pre-Jamboree that got shattered because of what you saw on Saturday and Friday.
Shattered. Wow. Y'all were coming after me. Okay.
It is an opinion piece, so we got to come after you. Give you the hard question. Skip the sensitivity.
That's fine. Well, hope y'all aren't being sensitive. Okay, so like you guys said earlier, I was really, really pumped about Bowling Green. I was excited. I know they've got John Stock, Riley Davis, Gage Holman coming back. Tanner Brown is in his second year as a starting quarterback. I know they've got all that stuff going for them, and I was really excited. And then they got out there last night, and against CCS, I don't want to say they look bad because CCS was good. It's kind of one of those lose-lose things. Like, if you're CCS, okay, yeah, you looked good against Bowling Green, but what is it? Because Bowling Green is bad or because you were bad? And if you're Bowling Green, did you guys get spanked by CCS? Not spanked, but did you guys look the way you did against CCS because you are going to struggle or because you just were rusty? I tend to err on the side of being rusty. I think those linemen, because I know Ben Thomas was out a good portion of last year, and so they're still trying to get they've moved John Stock off the offensive line, and so they're trying to get a core of a line, of an offensive and defensive line together. But they've got some work to do. I mean, they gave up 5 sacks. Tanner, between the game against CCS and Franklin Classical, they gave up 5 sacks. That line has got to give Tanner Brown more time. But at the same time, he's got to know when to get rid of that ball, just to throw it away and not take the interception, but not take the sack at the same time. Bowling Green's got to stop that run game. But Gage has got speed when he can get the edge. A couple plays, he was able to turn the corner and head up the sidelines. He stepped out of bounds, which of course that happens to a lot of guys. They're on that 80-by-40 field, which is part of the reason CCS loves it, because they're used to it. But they've got guys who could shine. I love their quarterback competition where they let number 10 step in and play a little bit. I'll get his name in a second, but they let him step in and play a little bit of quarterback. They kind of had a little competition there at the Jamboree. So I did like seeing that, but other than that, it was really good. And I love seeing all the teams that were there. It's great to catch up with all the guys that played in the All-Star game the last 2 years, talk to a lot of them and just some of the coaches. It's a great time for everybody to get to see everybody and really talk.
I bet you were overly ecstatic, being the homeboy you are, that CCS spanked South Haven, as you would put it. As they spanked South Haven in the rematch of the championship.
Well, here's the thing, boys. Is there two James Shannons and one of them's an alumni of CCS and always wants to see the best for them? Yes, there's two James Shannons. The James Shannon, the alumni, the husband, the father, the guy that does fire alarm for a living. That James Shannon was happy to see it, but the James Shannon for 8-Man Extreme. When I look at that jamboree, I'm not going to take a whole lot of stock in it, and I'll tell you why. It's a jamboree. Not everyone's going to show everything. Not everyone's going to pull every rabbit out of their hat. And to be honest, I almost feel like CCS did that to an extent. I feel like they pulled out no holds barred, even to the point of letting Micah Jones, their backup quarterback, get some snaps. I mean, they were pulling everything, and I don't feel like South Haven showed everything last night, and I feel like that was on purpose. Now, the things that they did show, there were some good and there were some bad. Of course, Kobe Rojo decided not to come back and play quarterback. It would have been his third year, but Andrew Crawley got the start as a sophomore. He's going to be their guy, and he it was kind of a roller coaster night because, he got beat for a touchdown while he was playing corner, and then he ran like 60 yards for another touchdown. He threw for 2 touchdowns, threw an interception, and then turned around and hustled back to make the tackle on that interception that he threw to Jackson Daughter. So, he's at the point where, yeah, he's young, he's going to make mistakes, but he also knows how to make up for those mistakes. Now, that's not saying that it's okay for him to make mistakes, because he can make up for it. If you can eliminate those mistakes, then the positives will stay and you'll be fine. But, they have to give him more opportunities to be successful. I think I saw a couple plays where, he had his primary read and he was kind of staring down his primary read when he had a check down that was open off to the side. And I think it's a part of growing. But I think when he gets those reads and he's looking at his primary receiver and he's shut down, he's got to be able to look over and see that check down. And I don't know if he's not being given a whole lot of check downs, or if he's just not aware of them. But he has to be able to hit more check downs throughout the year, because that's what's going to keep him from taking sacks, from taking interceptions. When you get intercepted when you try to force the ball into a spot. And so I think that's where they've got to work on. But Eric Sorto showed up for a couple times. He got a couple tackles, couple catches. I was really impressed by the other sophomores, Cole Laird and Manny Ding. Manny Ding, 2 touchdown catches. One where he put I want to say it was Sacred Heart. He put him on spin cycle there on the sideline. But Cole Laird, I thought he showed up. Very first play of the game, ran for a touchdown. So, it's good to see. It's good to see them hit. But again, I don't think they showed everything. They're going to have 2 or 3 weeks, I think, maybe just 2 weeks to sit, and then they've got Webb for their first game, and for Webb's first game as well. So. And Webb having the question marks they do, but still having the skill, I think that's going to be a great test for the first game of the season for both of them.
Yeah, we have no clue what Webb nor Swanee are capable of, because they never start their school year until the very last week of August, and that's when they start their football practices. So it's going to be interesting to see how all their teams participate going forward. Webb's first game being in week 3 of the season at South Haven, and then Swanee's first game being in week 4 against at Riverside on a Thursday night. So that's going to be interesting. So since we unfortunately don't have Judd Powers to interview on the show, it's time for us to get into our predictions. So I have right in front of me. Let me actually just adjust something real quick. James won't be able to hear me on here for just a few seconds, but there we go. So I have in front of me the helmet schedule. It looks fantastic. Has our new logo.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. Looks awesome. We're going to release it tomorrow. We have all the games. We don't have our broadcast schedules because we're changing that this year. You don't get to know what game we broadcast until the show Sunday, until we do our predictions. We announce it after our predictions.
So y'all got to listen to the show every week.
Yep. You got to listen to the show every week if you want to know especially during rivalry week, as we always do that, to where you don't get to know the game until the last week. But from now on, you have to listen to the show to know which game we're broadcasting. So we're going to go with our predictions for Week 1, August 10th of the 2018 eight-man football season in Tennessee.
Wow, this is a crazy moment.
No, Isaiah and I were talking about this before the show. It's crazy how we're already in August of 2018. I feel like just yesterday I started college. I honestly do. I feel like it was just yesterday I started my college year, was doing first year eight-man extreme, and it's crazy how we're already in August of 2018.
Yeah, I thought you were saying, all right, let's go for Week 1. And for a second there, I was like, oh, we're just picking a random week?
No,
wait, it is Week 1.
It is Week 1, yeah. Yeah, very much. All right, so Week 1, there are only two games. There are only 4 teams that are active. So in the North, South Haven's on a bye. Tennessee Heat's on a bye. Lighthouse Christian is on a bye. In the South, Riverside, Webb, Lancaster, Classical, Swanee, and Tennessee School for the Deaf are all in a bye. Now, however, Tennessee School for the Deaf is not in the South. They are an independent team. But we'll be covering them during the season as we hear their games and such. But we'll go, of course, from the top to the bottom of the helmet schedule. You don't have them. I would say if you do have them, follow along. You won't be able to follow along until next week when we release it tomorrow. But going from the top to the bottom, Bowling Green Christian Academy hosts Franklin Christian Academy. Opening game for the season. Again, from the impressions we saw, FCA looks like they're going to be a good squad this year. Bowling Green has the potential, but they didn't show it necessarily in the Jamboree. We'll start with you, Isaiah. So with Bowling Green FCA, who do you got picked?
Well, I think it's going to be a really offensive game. The defenses both showed some struggle in the Jamboree, and of course you can't take that as how it's going to be, but based off of what we know, this is probably going to be a high offense, high-scoring game. But I think that FCA is going to pull this out reasonably with a reasonably high score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're thinking you predict FCA with that. All right, James, what do you got?
Boys, listen. Listen. A second.
Listen.
Wait. Listen.
Yeah, listen. Hang on. Just listen to the silence.
Listen. FCA was missing John Buchanan for academic reasons. They were missing Daniel Holcomb because he was on vacation. And so they looked lost at times last time. Like their line looked lost at times. But here's my thing. I think last night, as disappointing as Bowling Green was, last night was the swift kick in the pants that they needed as a wake-up call to show them, hey, we're not going to get handed what we think we should get handed this year. So saying that and given last night into perspective, I have Bowling Green picked for tomorrow night, and Trent's going to like me, or Friday night, sorry.
Well, James, if I can counter you for a second, just pick your brain a little bit. I think that in the Jamboree, it really doesn't matter what the score is, but what you really need to look at is pass accuracy and ability to block on the offense and reach the quarterback and play good coverage on defense. And I just didn't see those kind of things with Bowling Green. I just saw with both teams lines that were having a lot of trouble. And of course, the score doesn't matter, but effort, attitude, and even understanding of the game it really came out last night with a lot of teams where you could really see that vividly.
But you tell me, who is going to be the deep threat for FCA? They've got Buchanan, and I am thoroughly looking forward to seeing like the matchup between John Buchanan and John Stock. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'm going to go up to the game to watch it. But for real though, who's the deep threat for FCA? Whereas Bowling Green, you've got Gage Holman and you've got Riley Davis, and you know what? If here's the problem. Now, granted, FCA has a decent backup, Sonny Reed, the senior, but Bowling Green, I think, has a good backup as well. With again, I didn't pull up his name, but number 10.
Taking some time to pull it up there. So your FCA Isaiah looks like.
And I don't think they necessarily needed a deep threat when you have. I mean, I'm sure James could agree with me on this. James, would you rather have the FCA run game or the Bowling Green run game?
To be honest, I would rather have, in terms of entire run game, I would rather have Bowling Green because you have Riley Davis and Gage Holman.
That's true.
Whereas for FCA, I think you just have John Buchanan. So if he sits out, I mean, really, FCA was not able to move the ball last night, even on Classical, whereas Bowling Green was able to move the ball several times on Classical.
That's true. And I think it would be a completely different story if they don't get Buchanan back by Friday. But we're just gonna have to see what happens.
So your FCA,
well,
Isaiah,
they'll have Buchanan back.
Good.
But here's my thing: if Buchanan goes down or he's not back, they don't have anybody behind him.
That's true.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So your FCA, Isaiah, did you take Bowling Green bias, James?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you're Bowling Green bias. Okay. The only other game that's happening in the first week is CCS, the Colts, the reigning national champion, or defending and reigning national champion Christian Community Colts host the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Isn't that kind of the same thing?
I say reigning and defending because it is the same. It is the same thing. Defending was more the word I wanted to use there. But the Knights of Sacred Heart head up to Christian Community, about a 2.5-hour drive for them to head up to Christian Community. From what we saw from both of the teams in the Jamboree, some could argue it's a no-brainer. Some could argue that it's a very predictable outcome, but we've been proven wrong before very much. So, James, I'll start with you. As much of the I would argue there's no two sides of James. There's the one that's CCS biased. But let's hear what you have for Christian Community Sacred Heart.
Okay, so when I look at CCS, there's some positives and there's some negatives. Obviously, the positives for me, two guys really stuck out. I know, Jefferson stuck out for you, Isaiah, but for me, Avery Harper stuck out. And he's been sitting behind Colton Rollins and Isaiah Webb and Jacob Ross and all those guys. And this is his time to shine now. And I think he did. He picked up several sacks, a couple tackles. I mean, he was all over the place. But the other part that I liked was number 77, Zach Head. And this is his first year with CCS. But he makes it to where CCS can play a 3-3 defense. He is that big nose tackle that's going to gum up the middle, and he's going to make teams run the ball to the outside. They're not going to be able to just go straight up the middle, and that's going to cause several teams that don't have that speedy edge back or the back that can get to the edge. That's going to cause problems for them. But on the other side for CCS, I say this every year, and I really do love him. But he played well the other night. Nathaniel Rowley played very well the other night. But my biggest problem with him is he's got to keep a cool head. And there was twice against the Heat where, and now I'm not dismissing the Heat, and I'm not excusing anything that they might have done to provoke him. But I saw a couple times Friday night where if it was a game situation, I think he opened himself up to give up a 15-yard penalty due to unsportsmanlike. I mean, there was a time where Preston Sloan from the Heat just straight up, it was a textbook knees, shoulder pads to the knees, and pick him up and put him down on the ground. And, he was jaw jacking with him all the way back to the huddle. And then he took a hit from Micah DeGrood, who played in the All-Star game last year. And, DeGrood mouthed off to him a little bit, and he kind of jawed back at him. And I think in that regard, he's got to learn to keep a cool head. He's got to learn to be a leader, and he's got to learn to just to do everything on the field. I love him. He's a great. He tore up every team he played when he was at quarterback. I mean, I'm trying to think. I knew he had great pocket presence, but he didn't throw any interceptions. He didn't give the ball up. He didn't fumble. I don't think he took any sacks. So in terms of quarterback play, he has it all together. He threw 30 touchdowns last year. But in terms of after the whistle that could cost them, he's got to learn to keep a hold of that. And the other problem, my other thing is, look, Jackson Daughter and Derek Jefferson, I love both of them. I think they're great running backs. They gave up – there was 4 total fumbles, and I think they lost 2 of them. So in terms of they got to keep onto the ball. They got to hang on to the ball. For Sacred Heart, They were missing their starting quarterback last week. They do have 11 on the roster. They were missing their starting quarterback, Will Keel. His little brother Jake was in there. He was good. Will Walker, number 11, was a good deep threat. He actually had 2 touchdowns, and he beat Andrew Crawley whenever Sacred Heart and South Haven played. And then, like you said, Isaiah, Will Hoggle, number 44, just a bruiser, 2 sacks. I mean, he is on both sides of the ball. He is the guy that's kind of the guy that you circle if you're CCS to go, okay, we have to figure out how to shut him down. And number 9, Jake Wilson, is really shifty. He's got a speed, he had a couple spin cycles, and he's just they bring a talent to this. For everything that CCS has to fix from the Jamboree, and everything that Sacred Heart showed that was really great, and I'm really they really exceeded my expectations. I'm still going to have to take CCS on this one. I just think starting out, I think it's going to be tough. Sacred Heart has their times throughout this year that they're going to be able to hang with and beat teams, because there's several teams that are going to be kind of 500 teams. But I don't think CCS is one of those 500 teams. I don't agree with you, Isaiah and Spencer. I don't think that they are state championship team. They are. I don't even, to be honest, be deadly honest, I don't even think they're a playoff team. I know that is a super hot, controversial, unpopular at May Flanders Field take, but I don't have them as a playoff team.
So that was the most long-winded prediction I have ever heard on the history of 8-Man Extreme. But from what I get from it, you're saying CCS is going to beat Sacred Heart, but you don't think.
But you ended up getting your prediction out of it, though. So
after 5 minutes, okay, Isaiah.
But you didn't let me give my review of the two teams.
We got 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes for the show, man.
Technically, he's still talking about the Jamboree.
He's still talking. Yeah,
there you go.
Technically, all right, Isaiah. Who do you got?
No brainer, CCS. No brainer. I think Sacred Heart played very, very well yesterday. It surpassed a lot of expectations. Have a lot of great players, but just CCS is just too good right now for a team to come back into the MTAC and knock them out in week 1. I just don't think there's any possibility of that. I mean, if that happened, I think we would be looking at that as probably the biggest upset of the year. I don't think Sacred Heart is quite a playoff team. I have them going 2-6 right now, but they're not going to be a bad team by any stretch of the imagination, because they have players that can play. They're definitely going to have all-stars this year. I'm eyeing number 44. Gosh, what's his name, James?
Will Hoggle.
Will Hoggle.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a battle. I think it'll be close for the first couple of quarters, but I think eventually the schemes and the coaching of CCS, they're going to be able to blow the lid off this thing in the second half.
Dang. So
Isaiah, hey, give me something CCS needs to work on before next week.
Can I get back to you on that? I'm just kidding.
That's fine. You can bring it up too. You can bring it up when you join me this week on Extreme.
No, I got something for you. They really need to work on their ball security.
You want to elaborate on that, or is this
okay?
Yeah. How many fumbles did they have last night?
Several.
I counted 4. I counted 4 2 lost fumbles.
Yeah, I'm sure no team has an easy route to a championship. They're always going to face adversity. And I would hate for them to look back at the end of this season and say, we didn't reach our goals. We didn't achieve what we needed to achieve because we made a mistake in the fourth quarter. We weren't composed. We lost the ball. We threw an interception. Those little details need to be worked out if they're going to win the championship this year. I have them doing it, but it's going to take some work, as all teams need to grow.
Mm-hmm. So both teams, both people, CCS is going to win. And divided opinion between Bowling Green FCA. And our broadcast this week, the first 2018 Extreme Game of the Week, the Kingdom.com Extreme Game of the Week. I have to go over sponsors, that's right. So the first Kingdom.com Extreme Game of the Week is Christian Community hosting Sacred Heart. We're excited to broadcast the first game of the defending national champions and the returning Sacred Heart Knights from their suspension. We're excited to cover both of those teams this Friday. Myself and Isaiah will be on call from May Flanders Field in White House. We're really ready to get back in the broadcast.
Yeah, and I'm excited about, that booth especially.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we were there.
They got fans in there
now. Yes, they have actual fans in there instead of just, open air. But, yeah, we were when we were at the Coaches Forum, we got a chance to go into the broadcast booth and see what we were going into, and it's going to be a fantastic game to call from the booth. But yeah, I need to go over our sponsors for this season. We're hoping to get more. We're always hoping to get more sponsors. But we want to take this time. Obviously, GracePointe Healthcare we have to thank especially for hosting the Extreme Radio every Sunday. As well as they did chip in some money to sponsor the game broadcast to help us get to and from games. We also are especially thankful to Kingdom.com, as they are sponsoring. They are the title sponsor for the Extreme Game of the Week. So it's the Kingdom.com Extreme Game of the Week. It's going to be fantastic for all the places we go, and to say the Kingdom.com Extreme Game of the Week. And big news this semester, or I say this semester, but
you're already back in college mode.
I know. I'm in college mode especially. Well, the high school students have semesters too. But this season, it's Tennessee High School Football is sponsoring our broadcast this season.
They're excited about that.
Yeah, we're thankful for them to get involved as well, to not only support 11-man football teams, but to support 8-man football teams through all they do to give more media coverage as well. So those are our current sponsors right now. We're always open to more. If you have a business that wants to sponsor, you have anybody who is looking for marketing and advertising, email us 8manextreme@gmail.com. And that's the number 8, not the spelled out version of it. But yeah, the Kingdom.com Extreme Game of the Week this week is Christian Community. The Christian Community School Colts are hosting the Sacred Heart of Jesus High School Knights. And that will be live on YouTube. Our pre-coverage will begin about 6:30, 6:45 Central Standard Time, maybe a little bit before then. And it'll be our first game broadcast with all the new equipment and everything. And should I give these guys a preview of what our scoreboard and everything's going to look like, Isaiah?
Hey, these people have sat through an hour of the show. I think they deserve it.
All right, for the 5 of you that are watching right now, it's time to give you guys an exact preview of what we'll give you about a 10-second preview of what our game layout is going to be. So we'll give you just 10 seconds of what we've got. So there it is. There it is right now. That's what our loadout is going to be. We're going to have top left corner is going to be the 8 logo. We've got the team logos on the scoreboard down there, their names, instant scoring updates, the quarter, timer, the little 8-man extreme logo down there. And it's difficult to see it now. You'll see through this, but we have an instant replay module now, straight from the All-Star game. So it's going to be a fantastic set of broadcast tools that we have now. This season is going to be fantastic. I know that I can speak for myself in saying not just with the up quality we have of our broadcasting equipment, but just the excitement we're going to see of the youth of MTAC this year, since the majority of the seniors have graduated from the 16, 17, 18 class. This season is going to be fantastic all around, not just for 8-Man Extreme, but for the Middle Tennessee Athletic Conference.
Yeah, this is a really exciting year, and I have a feeling this season is going to be big, not only for 8-Man Extreme, but for the MTAC. A lot of exposure this year. I think things are definitely on the come up for the league and for 8-Man Extreme this year.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's going to sign it off this week for Extreme Radio presented by GracePointe Healthcare. Go to GracePointeHealthcare.com, request your appointment online. If you mention you're from 8-Man Extreme, you get $20 off your new patient office visit fee. GracePointe Healthcare, modern medicine the old-fashioned way. As we said, our first game broadcast of the year, Christian Community School Colts are hosting the Sacred Heart of Jesus High School Knights. Isaiah and I will be on call for that. It's going to be a fantastic game, and we are ready for the Kingdom.com Extreme Game of the Week. On behalf of James Shannon, Isaiah Austin, everybody else who helps make 8-Man Extreme such a success, we will see you all on Friday for our first game broadcast. And I think Isaiah has one more thing before we sign off.
In James' voice, see ya!
See
ya! Dang it.
Both of you guys just broke the mics on the set. We'll see you on Friday, everybody.